Blackstonian Radio. Blackstonian Radio. Blackstonian. Black Boston's 411 24/7. Blackstonian Radio.
Greetings, this is Jamarhl Crawford right now with Dr. Runoko Rashidi, our very special guest on Blackstonian Radio. And Dr. Rashidi, thank you for taking this time with us today, and want to just really get right into the interview and just begin. For those in our listening audience who may not be familiar with your work, just tell them a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a historian. I guess an anthropologist too, and you could say a writer. I'm an author, world traveler. I travel all the time. I've been to 100 countries in the last 12 years. And I'm a race man. That means everything that I do, everything, is about uplifting the African community. So if I go to England, for example, I'm going to go to the museums there. I'm going to go to lecture there. I'm going to get research there on the history of African people, because I think that we can't put enough emphasis on history, and we need to use history to lift our people up. Everything that we do, bottom line, needs to be directed towards uplifting our community. If you're an artist, if you're a businessman, if you're a teacher, a parent, everything should be geared towards that. And in my small way as a historian, that's my contribution to black folk, because I think that history is pivotal, is fundamental, and the people who really know themselves are very, very difficult people to defeat.
Now, I'd like to ask you, because when I speak to people who have, dedicated their lives to either history or activism, all in the furtherance of our people, I always find it interesting to like, where did this spark first get ignited for you? What made you, take your name, or what made you choose this path, this history as a vehicle of the redemption or for our people?
Probably just a natural, coalition of things. From the time I was a young kid, I liked to read. History was easy for me. I could memorize dates and facts. So over a period of time, considering the time that I grew up in, I'm 57 years old. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. So I remember being around the Panthers and the movement against the war in Vietnam and the end of the Civil Rights Movement and part of the Black Power movement. And that molded and shaped me. When I was 14, 15 years old, I was listening to the speeches of Malcolm X and reading, Marcus Garvey. I went to a university in Southern California. By the time I registered, most of the classes were full, and the only classes that were really available were the Pan-African Studies classes. So I enrolled all Pan-African Studies. This is way back in 1972. And my life was transformed. I was hooked. I was locked in from that point. Everything, became Africa. It was like I found myself. I went to a speech, I won't call it a lecture, by a man at that time known as Stokely Carmichael, who later people might know him today as Kwame Ture. And it was mesmerizing. And he talked about the role of students and young people. And I wanted to be a part of that. And so with my interest in reading, kind of being a nerdy, egghead kind of brother, but my passion for African people, I began to gravitate towards history. And the first really, really major work, blew my mind. I'm still impressed with it in many ways today, is the book Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. That's a profound work. Yes. Because for a number of reasons. First of all, he not only talked about the great things that African people did, he talked about how we lost it. I get that question a lot. Runoko Rashidi, if black people did all these great things you claim they did, what happened to us? How do we blow it? How do we get in the situation we're in now? If you don't mind me saying, how do we move from the pyramids to the project? So he tried to address that. And then he did something else. He said, this is how we can get it back. based on everything I've studied, this is how we can regain our rightful place in the world. And the third point is he was the first person to really talk about African people all over the world. Up to that point, I had never heard about African people in India, in China. I knew my history began with slavery and colonization. And here's a historian who said, no, no, no. We have a history well beyond that. We were a global people beyond that. We left Africa and traveled the world before shackles and chains were on our hands and our feet. That was earth-shattering. And I've been in the game ever since.
Well, now, for our listening audience, you've done a monumental amount of work, both, whether it's the tours or the lectures or the writings that you've put forth. Is there anything that stands out among them that you're most proud of or consider your stellar work, your masterpiece?
Well, I don't know if there's one thing. I'd love to be able to say that I've been to all these places in such a short period of time. I think that's record-setting, maybe more than any scholar or African historian in modern times, maybe ever. Just the sheer volume of places I've been to. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be able to say I've lectured in 55 different countries. That's quite an accomplishment. Yeah. And it's measured by, I didn't come from a privileged background. I didn't, I don't work at Harvard like some people I know. I had to earn this. This was a labor of love, but it was really, really a labor to accomplish a lot of these things. I think that I'm in my prime right now, and I would like to think that much of the best of my work is yet to come. I think that one of my big contributions, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant or like I'm bragging, I'm just really trying to be objective, is to be able to help expose more of us to the fact that we have black populations in places, huge black populations in places like India. I've been arguing for some time now that India has the largest black population in any one country on earth. Black people in the history of ancient China. The Aboriginal Australians, where do they fit in? Millions of black people, African people of African descent, whatever you want to call them. And the terminology is important too. In the Pacific, who have African roots, who at least will say they come from Africa. So what is an African? Who is an African and who is not an African? And I think that's something that I've been able to contribute to the discussion on, and I'm pretty pleased about that.
All right. Now, I know throughout your career and your travels, you've had the opportunities and the blessings to work with many of the great black African scholars, of our time. And as you noted, your age, and that we are actually, and you also noted that some of your best works are probably yet to come. And we're losing a lot of our scholars and whatnot. Can you please tell us about your experiences working with the great Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and also, too, tell us about your working relationship with Dr. Ben, and Dr. Ben, who is still with us, thank God. And please give the listening audience an update on Dr. Ben as well.
Oh, yeah, I'd be delighted to. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have worked with a lot of these great men, and great women, too, for that matter. One of the greatest of them all is Ivan Van Sertima. Ivan Van Sertima was a wonderful scholar. He was born in this month, as a matter of fact. I think 1935, in Guyana, in the hinterland of Guyana in South America. Used to be British Guyana. And Guyana also produced people like George G.M. James, who wrote the book Stolen Legacy. Some people might know that book. And a number of other scholars, too. A brother named Walter Rodney, who did a great scholar, an economist, who wrote the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. So Guyana has an intellectual tradition, or a tradition of bringing people like Jan Carew, bringing forth great scholars. So Ivan lives in Europe. He does some field research in Africa. And in the middle 1970s, he made a big name for himself in the African-centered community with his work on the African presence in America before Columbus. And the signature work is They Came Before Columbus, The African Presence in Ancient America, published by Random House, I think in 1975 or 77. And this is not long after Chancellor Williams' book, Destruction of Black Civilization, came out. I think that book first came out in 1971. In 1974, I'm almost certain, was the first English work of Sheikh Anta Diop. His book, African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality, I think was published in 1974. And this is around the same time of Dr. Ben's works coming out. Books like Black Man of the Nile and His Family, African Origins of Major World Religions. So this is a time which is kind of like a golden age in the recent period of African-centered historiography. You had these great works by these great scholars coming out at that time and laying the basis for basically everything we're talking about. And that produced me. That was my formative stuff. So Ivan moves from England to the United States. He teaches at Rutgers. He teaches at Princeton. I think it was 1981, along with some other people, but he was the principal person who founded the Journal of African Civilizations. And I think that it may have been based in Chicago, and it was a journal, literally a Journal of African Civilizations, essays about great things Africans have done, Egypt, blacks in science, etc., etc. I met Ivan, I think, I met him in 81. And in 1982, I started writing for him, writing in the journal. And we developed a good relationship. He wrote and published, I think his last book was like 1997 or so, a book called Ancient America Revisited. Together we did a book. It's really mostly my work, but I'm proud that his name's on the cover too. And that is The African Presence in Early Asia. So Ivan's big thesis is that black people came to America before Columbus, and not only did they come, but they did big things. They did grand things. They helped lay the basis for civilization. He would emphasize that we have a history before slavery, and that you can't start at that point. And great scholar. I was really happy to work with him. He died about 3 years ago, and he is sorely missed. Dr. Ben, Joseph Alfredo Antonio Ben Yakinen, turned 94 on December 31st. And he's in a nursing home in New York. His health obviously has declined, a series of strokes. His wife passed. His wife of something like 45 years passed a couple of years ago. We hope to get him out of this nursing home and back into his residence in Harlem, soon. Birthday party for him yesterday. Of course, Dr. Ben, again, wrote books like Black Man of the Nile and African Origins of Major World Religions. Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, those were titans. Sheikh Anta Diop, Chancellor Williams, these were pillars. These were the icons. If you are into basketball, you could say that these were the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, the Shaquille O'Neals of their day. They ran it. And all of us younger people, I won't say all of us, but I think I can say that, really are their offspring, in a sense. And it's our turn now. And where are we going to do this? And how are we preparing your generation to take it even further than us? There must be an intergenerational transmission of wisdom. And so it's kind of interesting that we're having this conversation, and I'm talking about Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and these sisters and brothers, and then, I'm talking to you. So we have 3 generations right there. Those great scholars that influenced me, and then myself, my peers will include people like Tony Browder, Ashra Kwesi, Ray Hagins, numerous others. Molefe Asante is a little older. And then the younger generation. And then we also have people coming up, the students today. So I think it's important to pass this information along, and allowing me to talk about Ivan Van Sertima and Dr. Ben helps facilitate that, and I appreciate you for it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I mean, both of those have definitely been pivotal to my own development, and it's something that we use in the Blackstonian to give to our youth and our community to promote these images, because as you say, they should be as widely known as the basketball stars, or dare I say even the rap stars. Yes. Now, your current focus of work, because as you said, you focused on this global African presence, and as you said, Dr. Van Sertima did the Americas. You've done, Asia. You've done on and on. Now, tell us about your current focus.
Well, I'm gonna go back to Asia eventually too. I want to write, since you brought it up, I want to write another English language book on Asia. The first one, the books with Dr. Van Sertima, those were anthologies, meaning that I was the editor-in-chief. A lot of it is my work and my writing, but I want to do another one. And remember, the last edition of that book came out in 1995. It's already been 16 years. And some of that information we wrote as early as 1982, 1983. So I'd like to do another book on Asia that updates, put a lot more emphasis, say, for example, on the black presence in early Vietnam, in Cambodia. Who's done anything on that? So that awaits me. And also, I'll tell you something else I want to do, a longer-term project. I want to do something really serious on the black presence in Australia and the Pacific. Nobody's ever really done that from a Pan-African perspective. You got millions of black people in places like the Solomon Islands, in Fiji, that I am aware of, who say they come from Africa. And they look like people on the continent of Africa. Over the last year or so, I've developed a relationship with Chief Benny Winda, chief of the Dani people in West Papua New Guinea. And we're talking about Pan-Africanism. You got a whole nother component there. And that's something that I want Runoko Rashidi to be smack dab in the middle of. But my most current book, and this is a book that I'll be promoting heavily when I go to Boston, in just a short time. It's called Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe. And it goes well with my work on Asia. It is literally a book about, many chapters with wonderful color photographs of the African presence in early Europe. Now, when I say early Europe, I'm looking specifically from the time of the African presence among the Greeks and the Romans. We pretty much start from there. There's a significant chapter on the people called the Moors, who reintroduced civilization to Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. There's a nice little essay, maybe my favorite in the book, in fact, on the black Madonnas of Europe. I'm absolutely intrigued by them. And then you have a section that deals with black people in the later phases of European history. People like Alejandro de Medici, who was the reigning Duke of Florence and the first black head of state in the modern Western world. And people like Alexander Dumas, who gave us the expression, one for all and all for one, who told us that your work may be completed, but your education is never finished. And who I really love the statement, a man's mind is elevated to the status of the women with whom he associates. So we talk about him. And of course, the immortal Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, a man of African descent who was the father of Russian literature. So I'm very pleased with the book. It has a nice cover. It's my first so-called scholarly work in a while, and I resent that. I spend a lot of time writing for the people the last few years. I spent a lot of time on the internet, on Facebook, things like writing in newspapers, like J.A. Rogers, because I think sometimes, the African scholars, sometimes we lose sight of what it's all about. And a lot of us spend a lot of time writing for each other and forget that we live in a community that is in desperate need of scholars and Africans operating on all levels. So, but anyway, this is a fairly scholarly book, and I'm very pleased with it, and I think people are going to like it.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, brother, because it's one of the things that I truly appreciate about you is your ability to take some of these, very, very complex, historical analysis and break it down to a way that the common folks can understand. And in that, we attract more people because obviously this knowledge is, meant to be shared. And I think the method that you deliver it, both in your tone, your approach, the way you treat people in general, but also, too, bringing in the visuals, because as we know, we are a visual people. And the combination of all those things, I think, makes for a very dynamic presentation. And I know also, as you mentioned, you'll be here in Boston shortly on January 30th, Monday, at Hibernian Hall. And it's a great facility, state-of-the-art facility. Good brother of mine up here, Vernon Robinson, also known as VCR, poet, activist in his own right. I've known for years. Got us the venue there, and I look forward to seeing this presentation now on the big screen, because it is a huge spot. And I know a lot of people in Boston are already buzzing about it and are waiting in anticipation of this. And we hear that there also may be a museum tour in the works, and we'll provide further details if that solidifies. Is that correct?
Yes. For one thing, I'm going to bring a lot of new pictures. I always pride myself on getting new things, adding new things. It's exciting to me. I always get new information. For example, I'm really, really interested as of late with the African presence in the Greco-Roman world. I never knew until quite recently just how extensive that was. And I'm not just talking about black people. Like, for example, you also have, this is something I didn't even know when I was writing the book, the extent of the African presence in Greek mythology. I knew that Jason and the Argonauts went to a place called Colchis to get the golden fleece, and they were aided and abetted by a black woman, interestingly enough, by the name Medea. I knew that.
Oh,
and
boy.
I knew that there was an African hero who fought in the Trojan War on the side of the Trojans, a brother named Memnon, described as black as ebony, and the most handsome man alive in Greek mythology. But I didn't really know about a sister named Andromeda. And, there's a galaxy, a solar system named after her. And she's described specifically, I just found this out, specifically as an Ethiopian woman, a black woman. And she ended up marrying the great Greek hero, great, I guess is a relative term, Perseus. Very interesting stuff. But lots of images of black people on all levels of society in the ancient Greco-Roman world. So I'm going to show a lot of new pictures. And yeah, we're definitely going to do the museum tour. That'll be Wednesday, the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. I'm going to take people around. Haven't set a price or anything like that, but we're definitely going to do it, and that'll be the way I will introduce African History Month. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, sir, I thank you for taking the time to do this interview, and we really look forward to the presentation and really seeing and learning more about some of this information you've covered here with us briefly today. We thank you for your work, sir, and it is definitely a blessing to witness it and watch it be shared with a lot of these young minds who so critically need it. One last thing for our listeners, could you provide them with the way to follow you? I know you maintain a list and have done so for so many years. If you would be so kind as to give the audience a way to get this information directly from the source.
Sure. People can contact me directly at runoko@yahoo.com or runoko@hotmail.com. And, of course, Runoko is RUNOKO at yahoo.com or hotmail.com. And you can always call me direct if you like at area code 210-232-7272. That's 210-232-7272. I've got a couple of big websites. One is called Travel with Runoko, and the other is the Global African Presence. So if you just Google Runoko, not even Runoko Rashidi, if you just Google Runoko in a search engine, a lot of information will come up. But we certainly do want to encourage people to come out on the 30th. I intend to be in Fine Fiddle, and hopefully we can get a nice audience for the museum tour. And I hope to be in Boston for 2 or 3 days, and I'm looking forward to meeting as many people in the community as possible. So thank you. Happy New Year, and I appreciate you taking a little time with me today.
Thank you, sir. And probably the only black scholar that can also be found on Facebook.
I'm the pharaoh of Facebook. I love to say that.
Yes, sir. We love the information you provide. Well, thank you, sir, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday, January 30th.
Hotel.